Welcome to Shine the Light. I'm your host, Stephanie Freschetti. Aside from the initial trauma, one of the biggest risk factors in cases of domestic abuse are the lingering effects that the victims experience after trauma and don't seek care for. One specifically that we're going to talk about today is traumatic brain injury, TBI. We're joined again by Susan McInnes. She's the medical advocate for the crisis shelter of Lawrence County. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Susan, tell me exactly what TBI is.
Traumatic brain injury is an injury that is caused to the brain after an individual is born. And it can happen usually as a result of a blow or strike to the head or neck area, or someone being shoved down or pushed down.
So it's not always blunt force trauma that causes TBI?
It can be a strike or blow to the head. It can also be someone shaken violently, someone held down against their will, especially if their ability to breathe is being restricted. It can even be something, an object thrown at someone who strikes them in the head. Even being a passenger in a car and someone abruptly jams on the brakes and all of a sudden that whiplash occurs. That can also result in a traumatic brain injury.
Susan, we've talked about strangulation before and how it can impact the victim, and it can also play into TBI. I believe there's a specific medical term for that condition.
Anoxia is the term, which means restricted or ending the oxygen flow to the brain. When someone is strangled, it definitely disrupts that airflow. And so without the brain getting the oxygen that it needs, it can result in traumatic brain injury as well.
So how often does TBI occur in domestic abuse cases?
Much more than we have ever thought about or recognized. People who have suffered traumatic brain injury often don't put the significance onto it that they should, especially if they haven't lost consciousness. They think, well, I just saw stars, or I had a little headache for a while, or something else. They're not realizing the long-term effects that can happen.
Susan, the problem with TBI, just like when football players receive repeated concussions, is that it compounds, and that brings even more symptoms, correct?
Absolutely. Traumatic brain injury definitely has a cumulative effect. If you have one TBI and then you get a subsequent one or additional ones, it's going to just add to the damage. People often report of having vision problems or hearing problems. Difficulty remembering things is a big one. They might forget their doctor's appointment or getting a prescription filled or how to take that particular prescription. We know that people may have lose their motivation to follow through with plans or even be able to develop plans. They may not be motivated to do things. They may lose interest even in their personal hygiene and personal habits. TBI has a lot of different symptoms that are significant and can definitely change a person's lifestyle for the rest of their life.
Susan, how important is it for victims of this to reach out for medical help or counseling, to understand that these things absolutely need to be treated?
Absolutely, absolutely. Even if you haven't lost consciousness, if you thought it wasn't that bad, there may be so many invisible symptoms going on that you have no clue. So it's very important to report those to the medical professionals and then be agreeable to the tests or the examinations that they're going to look into to make sure that when you leave that hospital or you leave that doctor's office that you are okay, that something isn't going to happen down the road.
And finally, what do you tell the victims of this type of abuse?
I would tell anyone who is a victim of intimate partner violence, you don't deserve this. You did nothing to deserve this. You are not responsible. You deserve to be in a healthy, happy relationship. And so I would encourage anyone to be willing to reach out, whether it's calling our 24-hour hotline. You can do that anonymously. You don't have to give your name, just to get some help and support, or reach out to that doctor or that nurse or someone in that medical office. We've been working with folks in our community, including the hospital, to be able to help identify and recognize and ask the right questions at the right time in the right place. Just know that we're here to support you. I'm sure that people feel that they have a relationship with that other person who may be the abuser, and you may love that person, but love does not mean violence, and love does not mean abuse and fear. And so we need to hold the abuser accountable, not necessarily for punishment, but to make them realize that this is not the way a healthy relationship should be going. To hold them accountable and help them recognize. And trauma's a funny thing. Trauma stays with us even years and years after the abuse. So even if something happened to you years ago, please reach out and get some help so that we can make your tomorrow better than yesterday.
So interesting and informative. Thank you so much, Susan. Find us at shinethelight.tv on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.